The World Health Organization is being accused of underestimating the virus outbreak. Some of the signals it's been sending might have given certain countries the wrong impression. The coronavirus has reached the U.S. military in South Korea, while back in the U.S., drug trials begin for potential treatment of the virus. 80 scholars from around the world have signed a letter to China's communist leader, saying the spread of the epidemic has a lot to do with the regime's censoring of free speech. And inside a city in Hubei province, authorities were alerted to a rather peculiar report of negative 107 cases of the coronavirus.
Welcome to China in Focus. I'm your host, Tiffany Meyer. Despite 14,000 nurses from across China voluntarily going to Wuhan to help out at the epicenter of the coronavirus outbreak, it's not enough. Doctors from Guangdong went to Wuhan to help out and were overwhelmed by the lack of medical supplies and the sheer amount of patients. Two of them wrote an article in the journal The Lancet on Wednesday, detailing their experience and calling for international help. They described the physical challenges facing them, the lack of protective gear, the resulting pressure ulcers from wearing gear for long hours, and the difficulty of giving medicine to patients while wearing layers and layers of gloves. On top of that, they also suffered from psychological pressure and feelings of hopelessness. They end the article with a plea for help, stating, "But we need much more help. We are asking nurses and medical staff from countries around the world to come to China now to help us in this battle." Later, the medical team from Guangdong issued a statement through two media outlets in China, denying that the two doctors belonged to their team and saying what they wrote was not true. They also asked the two writers to withdraw their article from The Lancet and issue a public apology. After this issue was exposed on Twitter, the reports in Chinese media about the statement were deleted. And on the video side, around 50,000 people are requesting that YouTube explain why channels that cover the coronavirus are demonetized, meaning the channels lose their ability to earn money through ads. Some videos are even taken down. This is especially true in Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Korea. The YouTube's response is that videos that cover the coronavirus fall under their sensitive topics guideline and thus can't be monetized. However, this seems in conflict with the ideals of free speech. A petition started a few days ago is requesting that YouTube explain why channels that cover the coronavirus are censored. The petition plans to garner 50,000 signatures by March 22nd to get a response from the White House. And 80 scholars from around the world have signed a letter to China's communist leader Xi Jinping, requesting freedom of speech be restored to the people. Included among them are American scholars Andrew Nathan, Perry Link, and Zhang Lun, who are currently teaching at French universities. The co-signers include former U.S. Ambassador to China Winston Lord and Professor Jerome A. Cohen of New York University, as well as other scholars and activists. In the letter, they say the spread of the epidemic has a lot to do with the Chinese Communist Party's suppression of free speech. And a curious incident on Wednesday inside Jingmen, a city in the Hubei province. The regime party leader and the mayor got a warning from the highest level of authorities because the number of confirmed coronavirus cases on February 19th seemed rather odd. It was minus 107. And to expose the truth in Wuhan, the epicenter of the coronavirus outbreak, is risky. A Wuhan citizen live broadcasted on Wednesday about how he has been chased by police. This after he visited the P4 lab in Wuhan. Some suspect the origin of the coronavirus could have been leaked from there. He said when he arrived at the lab, it was closed. And as he turned to leave in his car, a police car showed up and tried to block him. He says he managed to get away. The video posted shows him driving very fast while still being pursued by the police.
各位网友，我现在在路上，突然被一个不知道是什么样的，应该是国安的人，国家安全局的人开着不是警车的车在追我，然后我现在没法直播，我只能拍一个这样的视频。我现在上传上去，我现在在武汉。 我现在开得很快，现在他们在追我，他们一定是想隔离我，向各位求助，
He had been posting videos on YouTube since a week ago, documenting scenes inside Wuhan, such as the streets, funeral homes, checkpoints, and stores. At this time, people have lost contact with him. And since authorities have ordered people back to work in China amidst the reeling economy, some factories can do nothing but fake it. Some companies don't want to endanger the lives of their workers. Instead, they turn on the appliances so authorities will see they are still using 3,000 kilowatts per day, even though they don't have employees working. But the cost of running all the electrical appliances is still lower than the cost to quarantine all workers, if it turns out there's a confirmed case. And Wuhan has been put on lockdown for over a month. Nobody is allowed to leave except for medical reasons. And Beijing is under wartime status with strict measures. But one prisoner seemed to be an exception. Mrs. Huang was released from a prison in Wuhan and was taken back all the way to Beijing without encountering any obstacles. In Wuhan, she had a fever for 5 days. After she went back to Beijing, she first stayed in an apartment of a residence block in Beijing for over 10 hours before she was sent to another place to be quarantined. On February 24th, she was confirmed to be infected with the coronavirus. But the residents in that area, where she stayed for over 10 hours, knew nothing about her. It wasn't until Wednesday, 4 days later, the resident block's management published an announcement about the case. Several people are wondering, how did Ms. Huang leave Wuhan? How did she enter Beijing? Who are her family members? What kind of identity did she use on the way? And which official approved it? Is she a relative of the emperor? With the number of coronavirus cases rising worldwide, there is an increased search for the so-called patient zero. The official reports state the first case appeared on December 8th. Officials also said the earliest cases were all linked to a seafood market in Wuhan. However, Wuhan City's official response stated this so-called patient zero denied ever having visited the South China seafood and wild animal market. And BBC interviewed the director and physician of the ICU at one of the hospitals in Wuhan, who said he had treated the first case of the novel coronavirus. It was a man in his 70s who was a bedridden and in-house patient. That was on December 1st. However, this patient also had no contact with the seafood market. So how did these two people get the virus? Finding the so-called patient zero can help answer such questions as to how, when, and why the outbreak began. Answering those questions can help people prevent more people from getting infected. Despite mounting evidence that Chinese authorities are underreporting how many people have the coronavirus, the World Health Organization has kept praising the regime for its transparency. Now, some worry this kind of talk could have endangered other countries that believe them.
The country that kept a perfect record of 0 infections during the 2003 SARS outbreak is now facing one of the worst outbreaks of coronavirus outside of China. Japan has announced 170 cases and nearly 700 more on the Diamond Princess cruise. Public events being cancelled, tourist sites nearly abandoned, and at some stores, masks are out of stock. The Japanese government is facing mounting criticism from both its own citizens and people overseas for its slow response and sloppy measures against the virus.
本当に遅いんでね、もっと早く順番にねしていけばねいいんだけど。
あれで結構ね、やり方がうまくなかったかなというところはありますよね。だと市中感染がもうおそらくね結構始まってると思うんですよ。
Some say the Japanese government's underestimation of the risk has been influenced by the World Health Organization.
We know the Japanese people always follow the rules, so no matter what the international organization says, they would believe it.
The WHO had repeatedly suggested that countries do not need to restrict incoming travel from China.
For the moment, WHO does not recommend any broader restrictions on travel or trade. There is no reason for measures that unnecessarily interfere with international travel and trade.
Even at a time when the Chinese themselves are hardly having any travel and trade going on.
Virtually deserted.
Japan chose to follow the WHO, a neighboring country to China and a top destination for Chinese tourists, Japan allowed passengers from Wuhan to come in without any screening until 1 week after Wuhan city itself was under lockdown. The first domestic case in Japan is a bus driver who had never been to China but had been driving Chinese tourists around. WHO had drawn criticism for what it's been telling the world.
The WHO chief is pretty pro-Beijing, so his attitude to China, many Japanese people know he is under pressure, or he might get some benefits. So this is really a huge miscalculation.
이번에 아주 WHO가 나는 굉장히 신뢰를 잃었다고 생각하고 우리는 그거를 다 받아들이면 안 돼요. 우리 제일 우선은 국민의 생명과 안전과 건강이에요.
Meanwhile, the agency has continued to praise the Chinese authorities.
Once again, I would like to thank the government of the Republic of China for its cooperation and transparency.
And side by side, you have started serious public health measures. And this is very, very important, and really we're proud that. And the other important element is the political commitment and your personal leadership, which we have been following.
Let me be clear. This declaration is not a vote of no confidence in China. On the contrary, WHO continues to have a confidence in China's capacity to control the outbreak. I'll repeat this. Let me be clear.
A petition on change.org demanding WHO's chief to resign has gathered more than 400,000 signatures. The petition accuses him of underestimating the virus and taking numbers from the Chinese regime as truth, when the organization should have provided neutral and accurate information to the world's people. Penny Zhou, NTD News.
And just in, President Trump is speaking in Washington about the global coronavirus situation. He met earlier with the CDC experts and other federal officials who are spearheading the U.S. virus response. Let's see what he has to say.
What we've done is we've stopped non-U.S. citizens from coming into America from China. That was done very early on. We're screening people, and we have been at a very high level, screening people coming into the country from infected areas. We have in quarantine those infected and those at risk. We have a lot of great quarantine facilities. Of the 15 people, the original 15 as I call them, 8 of them have returned to their homes, to stay in their homes until fully recovered. 1 is in the hospital, and 5 have fully recovered. And 1 is, we think, in pretty good shape. We were asking for $2.5 billion, and we think that's a lot. But the Democrats and I guess Senator Schumer wants us to have much more than that. And normally in life I'd say, we'll take it. We'll take it. If they want to give more, we'll do more. We're going to spend whatever's appropriate. Hopefully we're not going to have to spend so much because we really think we've done a great job in keeping it down to a minimum.
The Trump administration has asked Congress for $2.5 billion to prepare for the potential spread of the coronavirus. But the president is getting some pushback from Democrats. They say they are upset with how Trump is handling the outbreak.
In an effort to speed up the development of a coronavirus vaccine, the Trump administration has requested $2.5 billion from Congress. But some lawmakers are pushing back, criticizing the White House on its handling of the outbreak, which the CDC says will inevitably reach U.S. communities. Senator Chuck Schumer is requesting $8.5 billion, 3 times more than the administration. Meanwhile, the Secretary of Health and Human Services said on Wednesday the $2.5 billion is for 2020, but the amount they request may change next year.
So this would go through the end of 2020 fiscal year, and then we would work with appropriators on any adjustments to 2021 appropriations in the weeks and months ahead as we continue to learn on a daily basis about the spread of the disease.
House Democrats also didn't like the idea of diverting funds from the Ebola preparedness account to the coronavirus account.
The administration also asked permission to shift more than $500 million from Ebola preparedness. That is a mistake, and we are not robbing funding for other emergency activities.
To which Azar said right now the novel coronavirus is what's most pressing. He noted that the money can be restored to the Ebola account in the future. Azar added that if the funding is passed, some of the money would also go to buying more masks for health workers and patients infected with the virus.
And a new clinical drug trial for treatment of the coronavirus. Testing on adults diagnosed with the virus will start in around 6 weeks in Omaha. Meanwhile, the virus has infected a U.S. soldier stationed in South Korea.
Wanted to tell you the bad news we had this morning. We do have our first true USFK case. It's an active duty U.S. soldier.
A U.S. soldier has tested positive for the coronavirus in South Korea. This marks the first time an American soldier is infected with the virus. The 23-year-old, stationed at Camp Carroll, is now in self-quarantine at his off-base residence. Camp Carroll is around 12 miles outside of Daegu, an area that has seen an explosion of coronavirus cases in the last week. More than a dozen Korean soldiers have the virus. Over 500 Korean service members are showing symptoms or have been in contact with someone infected. Over 9,000 Korean military service members are under quarantine, having visited Daegu or nearby areas. 2 days prior, also in South Korea, a widow of a retired U.S. soldier was also diagnosed with the coronavirus. General Lyons, commander of the U.S. Transportation Command, said the military is watching coronavirus developments very, very closely.
And the Secretary of Defense has indicated that protection of the force is his number one priority regarding the coronavirus.
Back in the U.S., a CDC official gave an escalated warning over the spread of the virus. Dr. Nancy Messonnier, director of the National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases, said Americans should prepare for their lives to be disrupted. She mentioned that businesses and schools may close as a precaution. Alex Azar, Health and Human Services Secretary, later said that in the U.S., so far, the virus is contained. It's abroad where the virus is spreading rapidly. Italy and Iran have seen serious outbreaks this week, alongside South Korea.
The coronavirus outbreak has turned some Italian towns into deserted ghost towns, with locals forced to spend most of the day indoors.
Usually bustling with people and traffic, now deserted. The narrow streets of San Fiorano in northern Italy. It's one of the towns the country has put into effective quarantine, a coronavirus ghost town near Milan. Marzio Toniolo is a primary school teacher here, one of some 50,000 people who've had their lives put on hold, told by the authorities to stay indoors as much as possible.
We can take walks, we can walk our dogs, we can go jogging, we can ride bikes. But authorities suggested to us that we avoid contact with other people. We know that we may be infected and that we may already have contracted the coronavirus.
Marzio lives with his wife and 2-year-old daughter. His grandparents also share the house. Life is in limbo here, with little to do except watch the news for the latest on the virus and stare out of the window and wonder how long this will last.
My grandparents are 90, so we know that the risks, especially for them, are high. The coronavirus does not appear to have any effect on children except for a mild fever.
Day 5 of the quarantine and Marzio has run out of food. He'd normally pop out to his local shop, but this week he really needs to stock up, so he's forced to drive more than 6 kilometres to Codogno, the small town where Italy's outbreak of the virus began. The long line suggests many more are in the same boat. Marzio drives down an empty road to find a military police blockade at the entrance of the so-called red zone. He can't get close. Anyone who tries to escape the blockade faces up to 3 months in prison. Marzio has received news that a friend of his had contracted the coronavirus, but it's good news. He's already made a full recovery. There's a nervousness among locals in San Fiorano, one of about a dozen Italian towns in virtual lockdown. The wait for life to return to normal has a while to run yet.
Japan's prime minister urged sports events to be canceled or curbed immediately, while the coronavirus looms over the Summer Olympics just 5 months out.
With Japan battling the coronavirus, its Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is calling for sports and cultural events to be scrapped or curtailed for 2 weeks. That's amid concerns that the 2020 Tokyo Olympics could be cancelled. After facing criticism from opposition lawmakers, Abe answered questions about the possibility that the virus could stop the Games. He warned that the next 2 weeks were vital to stop the spread. Japan has close to 170 cases of infection, on top of the hundreds reported from the Diamond Princess cruise ship docked south of Tokyo. Abe's announcement came after Japan's professional baseball organisation said it would hold all matches scheduled until March 15 without spectators. The Tokyo Marathon has also been scaled back so that only elite athletes will compete. The Associated Press reported that a member of the International Olympic Committee said the Games are more likely to be cancelled than postponed or moved if the virus threat forced a schedule change, with a decision needed by May.
Here at China in Focus, we bring you first-hand information from inside China. Don't forget to subscribe for the latest updates.